I would love to pull back the curtain a little bit here and ask Alexi Lalas, TV personality. All of us that do these forward-facing things have an on-air personality and there's an off-air personality. We're not the same person
Sure.
doing both these things. I'm not the same on the radio as I am when I talk to my wife, and I'm curious about how conscious you consciously you think about those things. I think a lot of people who follow you on Twitter and watch you on television would think, oh, he's putting on an act most of the time when he's out there.
Well, first off, putting on an act or performing or recognizing that you are in the entertainment industry, all right, that doesn't mean that what you say can't be truthful and genuine and honest, all
Sure.
right? The way I say something, the way you say something is as important as what you say. I mean, welcome to show business, okay? And that's important. And recognize, the sooner you recognize that, the better off you are going to be. You mentioned your wife. I don't know if if this ever happens to you with your wife, but my wife will turn to me at different points, and this is the one that just kills me. She'll turn to me and say, "You're not on television right now." And it could be I'm gesticulating or I'm getting overly dramatic or emotional in something that she recognizes doesn't need to be.
Right.
And so I can guard myself against doing that, but I will raise my hand, as I know you and many others will, that our persona on air, on camera, on mic, yeah, it has to be different. And I don't think that you could, unless we wake you or me or anybody else up in the middle of the night when we're at our most honest, there is going to be a costume, there is going to be a personality, and there is going to be an identity that you inhabit and that you use. And if it's something that you are comfortable in, and I think it has to be something that you're comfortable in, that's when you're cooking, and that's when you're really doing things. And again, it still can be incredibly honest and emotional and come from a human place, even though it is dressed up in the recognition and the reality that this is coming in an entertainment venue.
Well, I think to give my insight on this, I think most people have an on person and an off person. Not to say that you're not putting effort in when you're off. It's just a different personality. You go to work, you're probably not exactly the same as you are when you're at home with people that you're close to, that you're intimate with. And nowadays, I think social media has promoted everybody's acting, everybody's doing an extra version of themselves. You're not going to tweet, so you're not going to say something into somebody's face that you would tweet. Those are very different. And to that point, I think you have a reputation for antagonizing, that people think that you're poking, and that that sometimes what you say is said to elicit a reaction, not necessarily what you think. What would you say to that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I enjoy, in the grand tradition of debating people. And if you are going to, be good at debate, anybody that's ever done it, you are actually required at a certain point to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and to argue somebody else's side, whether you agree with it or not. Now, the question that I get most often from people is, do you believe everything you say? Yeah, of course I believe everything that I say. But I also have the recognition and the understanding that I could put myself in somebody else's shoes, all right, and find something that I can argue. And I have to be able to hold on to something that I can argue. I don't just say something for effect. But to your point, I recognize that how I say something is as important as what I say. So I mean, look, we've been out before in a private type of setting, and I enjoy having debate. I enjoy poking people. I enjoy, because that's where the good stuff is, and that's where I really get to understand what's going on. And by the way, that's where, if I am going to change my thought or my the way that I think about things, that's where it's going to come. And my mind has been changed. I have been persuaded at different times, but that's how I get to it. It's the household that I grew up in. It can be frustrating for my wife and for my kids. My brother will tell you that we both grew up not only having these types of debates around the dining room table, but being required to back them up. And my father, doing kind of what I recognize and raise my hand that I do at times, which is poke. But I think that I benefit from it. And I like to think, if I'm doing it to somebody else, holding them to account and making them explain why they said something, or showing them why I believe that this is wrong or hypocritical, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe looking at something from a different way, that can help further the conversation.
But do you worry at times that your approach, which obviously the nuance gets lost in some online discussions, but do you worry that your approach makes you look like a bully sometimes?
Sure. Well, I mean, if I don't want to bully anyone, but I also don't want to dumb it down. And at some point, you gotta meet me halfway. And if you're just gonna fold up and go away, that's fine. But that's not the type of interaction or discussion that I want to have. And look, you've pushed back on me at different times, and I completely, as long as it's done, I think in a civil and respectful way. And even that nowadays with the platforms we have, it's questionable whether we can do that. But I like that. I have no problem with people pushing back or disagreeing with me. That's that's totally fine. But if and when I disagree with you, or if and when I call you out, or if and when I make a point as to what I see as something that's wrong, something I disagree with, something that's hypocritical, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that that's bullying. I think that
Okay.
that's actually getting to the crux of whatever situation and discussion that we are having.
Okay. I mean, fair enough to
If
that
you can't
point.
keep up, that's your problem.
Okay. All right. Obviously, again, you and I have had some pretty intense back and forth. I think, in a public setting where both of us recognize that part of it is a performance, right? Like
Sure.
the passion is there, the belief is there, the honesty is there, but it's like, okay. And I wonder about some of your contemporaries, some of your former teammates out there as sort of publicly. Not everybody's chosen the path you have.
Mhm.
Right. I think of Marcelo Balboa, who you partnered with a lot as a center back.
Sure.
He's an incredible broadcaster. He does multiple languages. He's not a firebrand the way that Alexi Lalas is a firebrand. But you're the guy who played striker on your team in '94. Eric Ronaldo very much is a firebrand. And I don't want to make this about Eric, but I am curious about the back and forth, between you, or from a generation that is seen as so foundational to what the sport is, and sort of how you view your responsibilities differently, maybe from somebody like Eric.
Yeah, I mean, he goes about his job one way, and I go about my job.
Right.
I don't know if it's a different way, but it's the way that I have always done it. I mean, I love the fact that Eric is provocative. I love the fact that he absolutely believes whatever it is, even if I think it's ridiculous or crazy. And that that's okay. And I think he would say the same thing about me. Eric, he has no filter. We all understand that. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think he's done so many different things, and that that gets back to this whole generation, my generation. Obviously, there came a point now decades ago when for most of us it stopped being about kicking the ball. We weren't able to kick a ball, and we were that first kind of soccer generation to then go into maybe some more traditional ways, but then kind of be in leadership positions and do all that. And we can argue back and forth as to how it's gone, how it hasn't gone, and certainly there's those out there that would say that we are the antichrists and we have brought down everything, and we are the cause for all the ills both on and off the field of American soccer. But this is the way the world works, and there are players today, or players that are finishing their career today, that are going to take over from us, and they're going to come for us. And I get it; they can pry it from my cold, dead, redheaded hands.
Right. Yeah. I certainly think that people have to understand. It's not like you're just going to go here, have it.
Right.
You have an ownership of American soccer just as anybody else does. But I think one thing that comes out from some fans, and particularly younger fans, and I'm not trying to just trash an entire generation, but there's this notion that American soccer has matured past, become much more sort of refined in a way that somebody like Alexi Lalas, who did play in Europe, we didn't talk about your time in Italy playing, but somebody like Alexi Lalas can't understand, because look at our players now are at Champions League level clubs. How can you? Why put an Alexi Lalas on a broadcast for a league or for a competition that he can't understand? That's the attitude.
Right. So how dare you judge me on my age? because that's ageist. All right.
You're
You're
right.
not
It
allowed to do
is.
that. I mean, that generation that you're talking about loves to lecture about what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do. And yet in this case, it seems completely appropriate for them to judge me relative to the fact that I'm a grand
Well,
total of 52
hold on.
years.
Let's be fair that yes, while there may be some overlap in those two groups, we're talking super nerdy soccer fans who are very intense about the future of the national team. They may not be the same people admonishing you about ageism, Alexi. Just to
No,
say,
listen. I listen. It's. I love the fact that there are so many more voices out there. I love the fact actually that there's so many more platform for those voices. You know, sometimes it makes our job not more difficult, but more cluttered out there
sure.
because now everybody has a microphone, everybody has a voice, and that's again not necessarily a bad
That's
thing.
why. Hey, it's why I'm here. It's why I'm here. I mean,
Sure.
I wouldn't be doing this and talking to you and have a radio show if I hadn't figured out a way to make the internet work for me.
Absolutely. And we are better for it. All right. We individually, I'm better for it, and soccer is better for it. And, that's a good thing. And again, whether they think that I'm fine or they think I'm the Antichrist, like I said, that's okay. They are certainly entitled to their opinion. And they think about soccer and they think about American soccer in a very different way. And their pathway, if they were sitting here and, doing This Is Your Life, it would be a very, very different type of story that they are telling. And whether it's, the influence of the FIFA game or something like that, or the fact that they have had at their disposal more than any generation and any culture and any country in the world, the ability to watch international soccer and leagues from all over the world at their fingertips. All of that, I think, plays into a much more mature, a much more educated, and yes, maybe even a much more discerning type of American soccer fan out there. But I also don't think that the fact that you have grown up, I'm not saying you, but you in general have grown up with so much more at your disposal when it comes to soccer makes you necessarily that much more mature or that much more knowledgeable when it comes to the game.
Okay. I mean, that's interesting. I mean, I think on the whole, more is better, but you're right. There's going to be different, different understandings and all those things. I want to
Stop,
ask
Jason.
you.
You know exactly what happens, all right? So this is what happens, all right? With all of this information and all of the, the intricacies and just the plethora, if you will, of soccer that's out there, what really happens? Then people start throwing out jargon, and there's all this industry speak, and there's the X's and O's, and
Oh
Zone
no,
14, and all this kind of bullshit that shows up.
there's a club, and Americans want to be part of the club, and they want to be part of the club with the fancy English people and the fancy Spanish people. I understand. I get that. I'm on board with that. I want to ask you before I run out of time. Coming back to you and coming back to who you are in your life and the personality that you are publicly. Does that get to you? Do you have moments where the negative responses that you get affect you?
No, it doesn't. I mean, I've been doing this a while, Jason, and I come even from before the internet, so people have been saying this to my face, behind my back, in emails, on texts, on phone calls.
Now I need a story. Is there somebody who's I don't you if you want to name names?
Actually, my mom since the early 90s has been keeping, for those that don't remember, like big soccer was a big deal back then, like the message boards and stuff like that. Hell hath no fury like a scorned soccer player's mother, as we know, believe me. I mean, we found that out real quick, right?
Timely reference.
My mom is, even to this day, will say, "Hey, did you know that this person said this about you?" So she keeps track of everything. I think she's got an Excel sheet, that she just clicks off as to, the naughty and nice list when it comes to something like that.
Am I
No,
on
you're
there
good.
somewhere?
You're all good. But listen, if you're going to be in this industry, if you're going to be in this business, if you're going to be a player, people are going to say stuff to you. And I have had, like I said, everybody and their mother say different things to me, and it's fine. I am human. Okay. I don't actively go out there and crave that. I don't want people to say bad things about me, but there's nothing I can do about it. I'm true to myself. I believe the things that I say. And I believe ultimately I'm a good person. And, I think that will shine through. And if it doesn't, Screw them. You know, that's nothing. There's not going to, and most of these people I will never, ever meet. And they don't know me and I don't know them other than this soccer world in which we inhabit. And they are certainly entitled to their opinion, as ridiculous as it may be.
Like, you don't have to throw that on the end, at the end. You don't have to diminish
sorry.
them by saying it that way.
Sorry, I should have said as moronic as it may be.
Oh, you made it worse. You made it worse.
That's
all
the
right.
story of my life, making it worse.
Let's come back to Alexi, late 80s, in his stonewashed jacket. And you know, I don't know that I'm going to do this every time, but it seems like a natural question to ask. You go back in time, you get into the American Soccer Time Machine, and you talk to that Alexi, and you say, this is what's going to happen over the next 30 years. What is his response to that?
I mean, I was a punk, but I wasn't, disrespectful. So I would look at this grizzled old 50-something-ish redhead and, who doesn't have a whole lot of the red anymore. And I would say, oh, that's really nice, but I'm going to make my own way. And, you're a moron back then, and you think you got it all figured out, even though deep down you know you don't. But I would say, listen, trust your gut. All right, you're going to make plenty of mistakes, just like everybody else. And ultimately, if the work, people talk about it all the time, and I know it's cliche to talk about it, but you got to work. And I've listened and watched you for years. And I know the work that goes into you doing what you do each and every day. And it ends up being this iceberg, right? The iceberg theory. You have all of this work that goes in, and what you actually see, either if I'm talking to the young kid on that field, or if you're, in television or anything like that, what you see on air is so minimal. It's just the top. But that good stuff at the top doesn't happen without that base, and all that base is the work, and nothing substitutes for the work. And people won't see it; they won't necessarily appreciate it in real time. But ultimately, if you're going to have good stuff sticking above the water in that iceberg, you better have done the work, and you will get found out real quick if you don't.
I just wonder what that kid would say if you said the words David Beckham to him. Who's David Beckham? And you try to explain who David Beckham is to 17-year-old Alexi.
That kid would have been much more impressed if you said like Def Leppard or Rat or Zeppelin or AC/DC. Yeah. And back then, my soccer world, I would have just probably come and, back then in the 80s, a little earlier than this, I would have seen the Detroit Express play in the old Pontiac Silverdome. And that was the extent of my professional soccer viewing at the time. I maybe would have had a VCR tape of highlights that somebody had, sent from Europe. I maybe would have seen Soccer Made in Germany on, the PBS station, or the Rai Uno station showing some Italian highlights. But that was the extent of my soccer being at the time. And so I had no idea what was to come. But, the kid turned out all right.
Yeah, the different world. And now Alexi Lalas. Thank you very much for the time, Alexi. Great
Thank
stuff.
you, Jason.